It's been 2 months since we first reported that JC Penney is being sued for misappropriating the fair and square icons that were created for them exclusively by the New York branding firm of Hudson Broad. Now we've put together a legendary trio of experts from the retail industry who present their thoughts on JC Penney's unfair and not square behavior in this matter. And they provide JC Penney CEO Ron Johnson with some valuable advice. But first, the backstory. JC Penney had a proprietary arrangement with Hudson Broad to have them create the exclusive icons to represent JC Penney's new image. As CEO Ron Johnson said it in his major presentation earlier this year, we're simply going to
treat other people like we like to be treated ourselves, fair and square.
Well, Hudson Broad created these totally unique color-changing LED fair and square icons, which were universally loved by JC Penney executives, including Ron Johnson. And the money was approved to have Hudson Broad produce an initial run of nearly 2,000 of these large fixtures to be installed in hundreds of JC Penney stores. Then, at the last second, JC Penney reneged on the proprietary agreement and had Hudson Broad's proprietary displays knocked off cheaply by another company, a clear violation of the agreement, and certainly a total contradiction to JC Penney's supposed fair and square image. A series of internal emails exposed that JC Penney was refusing to meet with executives from Hudson Broad to try to resolve this issue, and that JC Penney knew that what they were doing was wrong and would look bad to the public. So let's hear what some of the titans of the retail industry have to say. Joe Ciccio is the former CEO of I. Magnin. He's also the former senior vice president of Macy's, former senior vice president of Donna Karan, and he's one of the legends in the retail industry. Joe, what do you think happened here then?
Hudson Broad is a class operation. There's no question about that. You just have to look at their history, look at who they deal with, and look at their product. I think there's no question that JC Penney has gotten themselves in a ridiculous situation. When you do a proprietary arrangement, it's all encompassing. It's not a game. And when you do it, you do it. So to take this strange left-hand turn out of the relationship, somebody screwed up royally. And maybe they did think Hudson Broad wasn't big enough and would walk away, but JC Penney underestimated the level of professionalism and integrity at the Hudson Broad level. I think as a result, there is no question that it's JC Penney's responsibility to bring this to resolution as quickly as possible. It can only hurt JC Penney to prolong it.
Now, the series of internal emails between JC Penney executives, including those at the senior vice president level, suggest that they knew they were violating this agreement with Hudson Broad. They knew, Joe. And, you know, you're a former CEO of I. Magnin. What advice would you give Ron Johnson, the current JC Penney CEO, on what you think would be the right thing, or the fair and square thing in this case, to do now?
I'm not going to tell Mr. Johnson how to run his operation. He doesn't need me for that. But there's no question that Mr. Johnson and JC Penney has to bring this thing to a fair resolution as quickly as possible.
Joe, thank you so much for your time. We turn to James Damian, former senior vice president of Best Buy and currently the chairman of the board for Buffalo Wild Wings. What is your opinion of what JC Penney's obligation to Hudson Broad should be, given that the fair and square icons were proprietary products?
Well, you know, agreements of principle are words, and words are meant to be kept. Whether it's in writing or not, a bond and a relationship has been birthed there. And if Ron, as I know him and believe, is a guy that is not going to compromise those standards and principles, I would expect that if I were in his shoes, I'd be saying this: JC Penney must be fair and square across all aspects of our business. And he's made a promise to the market that we're going to play fair and square. There cannot be any airspace in between any of those issues. It's you stand for all of of it or you stand for none of it.
With us by phone is Jerry Neal, a veteran of the retail industry. Jerry is the former Senior Vice President of Merchandising and Presentations at Kohl's.
What happens is someone designs something that's great. The people who are in the company sell it to upper management who are totally excited about it, okay? But somewhere along the way, the people who are making the decision to purchase the end product are influenced by someone else like procurement, perhaps someone in budgeting. So let's see if we can't get this for a little bit less. But you can't buy an icon and then put it on the market and say, well, how much can we get this for? You know, people don't design Ferraris and say, well, let's see who can knock this Ferrari off. That's not the way it works. Mm-hmm. And certainly the people who dealt with Hudson Broad knew that.
Do you think that there is a greater responsibility on JC Penney to behave ethically given this fair and square positioning?
Absolutely, especially in this day and age. You're either honest or you're not. And it would be so short-sighted for them to play the cheaper way out by going and knocking it off. And I'm sure that Ron doesn't want JC Penney to be lumped and attached to that.
Is Hudson Broad at risk to look like a difficult vendor to work with because of this thing? And is it unfair that anyone could label them that way?
Sure, there can be ramifications. There could be another company that says, you know what, I'm not so sure I want to do business with them because of what happened with JC Penney, and I don't really know the whole truth. But the thing I love about this is this showcases Hudson Broad's stand for honesty and fair play. If I was on a retail side and I saw what was going on here and I knew what went down, I would want to develop a relationship with Hudson Broad.
Any final suggestions to Ron Johnson?
My appeal would be to Ron directly, just the way James has. Ron, I know you. I know you as a leader. I know you as a person. And I know what you stand for. You're an honest man. You love collaboration. And if you want collaboration in the marketplace to be honest, upfront, fair and square, do something about this and do it now and do it quickly. Because this will all come back to you, Ron, and on your watch, you're accountable and you're responsible. But I do believe that Ron Johnson will do the right thing.
James Damien, thank you so much for your time. I look forward to seeing you in the future. This story has now gone around the business community. It still comes down to an ethical question of the policies of JC Penney. They're talking about being a fair and square organization, just like you said. Somebody better figure out how you clean this up. Simple as that. Is that correct?
Well, I think they know how to clean it up. They just don't want to do it.
But why wouldn't you want to do it?
They know how to square this up. They just don't want to do it. And I guess they're concerned about admitting guilt, or I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. The thing is, anybody knows when you make a mistake, you try and correct it. And this clearly is a mistake, and they know that. It sounds like their internal memos even say that. And the longer it goes on without them correcting it, the weaker they're going to look. And the worse the public is going to think, well, what else are they not being honest about? What else are they not telling us about? Mm-hmm. And that's not a good thing when you're trying to create a new image for yourself.
Final question in regards to people who purchase JC Penney products, people who walk into their stores. Once this is out there, and now it's out there and people know, what do you think they're thinking?
Well, I think it's a very, very bad signal to give. If a company is saying they're fair and square, and clearly there's evidence readily available that they're not fair and square, it makes you question the whole premise of what they're doing. You can't have it both ways. You can't be fair and square on the surface, and then right below it, you're everything but that. You can't do that. I mean, the public will find out, and they will resent it. And they will feel like they're being duped and taken advantage of. And they're not going to shop in that atmosphere, trust me.
Oh, I know that for sure. Jerry Neal, thank you so much for taking of your time.
Sure.
I truly appreciate it. In addition to experts from the retail industry, we reached out to one of the finest legal minds in the country to discuss the fair and square lawsuit against JC Penney. Legally, where does this whole scenario end?
Hudson Broad said from day one, We will design it, but it is ours. It is not yours. It is ours. And I think that was understood by both parties day one. There was a handshake. There was emails. They made a product that was used by JC Penney.
In one of their stores, in their New York store. There was a big demonstration of this,
Yes.
Counselor.
So the defendant cannot say, wait a minute, we didn't like it. And look at the facts. The facts were on the side of Hudson and Broad. They had meetings. They had with senior officials of JC Penney. They liked the design. They went in stores. They designed it. They set it up. They had everything done. They did everything they were supposed to do. Then they came back, how much it's going to cost? JC Penney wanted a figure. They gave them a figure, and ostensibly either emails or with some of the senior people of JC Penney, they agreed to the figure, etc. But somewhere along the line, JC Penney figured, well, we can get it cheaper. And unfortunately, they said this fair and square slogan that they had, it didn't mean anything.
Counselor, several emails were sent back and forth between Hudson and Broad and JC Penney. One of the senior executives sends this email, and I quote, sends it back to Hudson and Broad saying, "The money for the project has been secured. We love it. It's done," and so forth. How does that play out?
I think it's a very, very strong factor. It's a situation where JC Penney now cannot say, wait a minute, we didn't know what was going on. They approved funding for it. And these emails are going to come back to bite them in the butt.
How do you think a jury would react to this?
Well, most jurors are average people, and most people rely on their common sense. Was it fair? Was it right? Was it ethical? And they look at this cold slogan by JC Penney, fair and square deal. They just didn't do that. This defendant, JC Penney, was wrong. And the jury could say, well, we don't like it. We're going to punish them. And so they could award a substantial amount of damages.
You have one executive actually stating that if this were to get out to the public, our fair and square image that we're portraying is a sham.
Well, it's going to be very, very difficult for JC Penney now to get out of that. We have emails going back and forth, and this whole concept about fair, square, they weren't fair and square, and they do not want jurors to hear that.
The question remains, if Ron Johnson wants the public to truly believe that JC Penney is a fair and square company, when is he going to make things right with Hudson and Broad, the company that created the fair and square icon?